we now welcome Giora Zwilling for our next presentation. Giora is Deputy Head of the Archives Department and Head of the Archival Description Office at Arolsen Archives, an international center located in the German city of Bad Arolsen in the state of Hessen, housing the world's most comprehensive archive on the victims and survivors of National Socialist persecution, which is registered also as a UNESCO Memory of the World. He previously worked at Yad Vashem Archives and as a media consultant for the United Nations Independent Commission of Inquiry on the 2014 Gaza conflict. At Arolsen Archives, he is responsible for the indexing, the online publication, and acquisitions of archival material. Giora, we welcome you very much to today's session, and we look forward to your presentation now.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the introduction and for the invitation. I'll start by a very short disclaimer, which I think is important, especially after the last presentation. The Arolsen Archives have huge collections, which are also almost entirely available online. We have very little concerning looted art. It has to do with the history of the institution, which I'll present in a few seconds. But it's a very useful resource to understand what happened to people owning the art. I will maybe do like a short introduction of the Arolsen Archives, or how they were formerly known, the International Tracing Service. And then if we have time, I will show our online archive, which we are very proud of, hope you all will use. I hope I can share my screen. So can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Very good. So the Arolsen, as I've said, we are now called the Arolsen Archives. We are actually better known as the International Tracing Service. We changed the name. It's due to a new, branding process. We are still actually officially called the International Tracing Service, and we still do tracing work. It means that we still have answer questions concerning the fate of victims of National Socialist persecution. I think 20,000 requests per year in addition to our online users. But I will get on that later on. So we are an international center on Nazi persecution located in Germany, unfortunately in very provincial Germany. We are actually the world's most comprehensive archive on victims and survivors of National Socialism. It's very important to say that the mandate of the International Tracing Service does not include only Jewish persecutees. Sometimes it's perceived as so, but all the persecutees of National Socialism, including political prisoners, including forced laborers, and so on, Roma and Sinti. And we have information on very large groups of people of all creeds and denominations, and we see ourselves as an important and unique source of knowledge. This is a quote by Thomas Burgenthal, a survivor, who defined us as a I'm sorry, my English is not as good as it used to be, a monument from paper. So the history of the institutions is a bit complex. We were never conceived as an archive, but as a tracing service. After the war, millions and millions of displaced persons in Europe, millions of people missing. And already during the war, there were a lot of efforts to trace people and to answer questions concerning the fate of people vanished or deported or incarcerated. At some point after the war, it was decided to concentrate all the tracing efforts in Bad Arolsen in Germany. Very trivial reasons, because it was not destroyed. There was a small concentration camp satellite there and DPs. And I think it was the central telephone line between Frankfurt and Germany and Berlin, and it's close to all the zones of occupation. It's a challenge because we are still there actually, but now mainly from the Home Office. So one has to understand that documents which we received, and we received millions of original documents from concentration camps, communes, DP camps, and so on. They were never perceived in an archive. And when we talk about provenance, one of the main decisions made by the institution in its first years was to dissolve all archival provenances and to be pertinence-based, that means thematically based. And all the documents we have received have been rearranged by big themes. You can see that in the online archive. I might show it later. Generally, we have some 30 million historical documents, but the numbers vary because we acquire a lot of documents. But let's say we have 30 million not original, but historical documents from concentration camps, from communes, and so on, which pertain to at least 17.5 million people. The main access to the archive was and is first name, family name, and date of birth. That is like the bare minimum you need to understand that you have the correct person. And the collection is comprised of originals brought by the Allies and other institutions to Arolsen in the 40s and 50s, as well as a huge amount of documents copied in other institutions due to the fact that the Arolsen Archives or the International Tracing Service understood very early that in order to supply information on the fate of all persecutees, it has the few documents, the millions of documents it has are not enough. Here I already have to say, even with the large acquisitions we still cannot supply information on all the victims of National Socialism, especially critical. It's especially critical when you go to Eastern Europe, to Romania, to Ukraine, to Poland, where not always there was any documentation of executions and elimination of people. And from there, we don't have a lot of documents. It has also to do with the institutional history, with the very high value placed on German documentation and less on non-German documentation, as well to the Cold War and the fact that the Soviet Union did not participate in the efforts because of some discussions concerning DPs, the ITS as a Western institution. I will do like a very brief introduction of the documents. We have more than 12 million documents from concentration camps and prisons, mainly documents concerning individuals. We have more than 8 million documents concerning forced labor, lists, as well as work cards, passports, and so on. It's an amazing collection. It's almost entirely searchable already online. And then we have over 2 million documents concerning DPs and 3 million tracing and documentation requests. That's a huge collection of all the requests sent to the ITS for information on the fate of persecutees. It's also important to say it's an amazing resource. We hope to have the metadata online soon. It's the only big collection we haven't published yet due to privacy issues. And because of privacy issues, we won't be able to show all the images of all those tracing requests online in the near future. It's a bit complicated. A word of like caution. Those files are amazing. They contain a lot of information. People from Palestine, or later Israel and America and Poland and everywhere in the world ask for information concerning their relatives. The Arolsen archives have a very important role in restitution and compensation, but the requests made to us are not requests which deal with property normally. They deal with the need to supply proof of incarceration and persecution. So normally our requests do not include like lists of property lost. It's very rare. A very small collection which is where we do some provenance research is items taken from prisoners at the day of incarceration. We call these Effekten. It's quite an interesting collection. It's very small compared to the million of documents we've talked about, where we actively seek the owners of the documents, and we also of the property, and we also don't see ourselves as the owners of that collection, but as custodians. Exactly. After a long period where the ITS was very closed, I'm trying to get to the online archive, but exactly that, I will talk about that now. The institution was, as I've said, for a long time, very closed. It has to do with our Träger, the body governing it for a long while, the International Red Cross, which was very strict about, or for long periods, very strict about being only interested in humanitarian work, the tracing work, and denying access to the archives for researchers. In 2006, there was a lot of critique concerning the long waiting times for answers on requests, the closedness, and so on. At some point, the International Red Cross decided that it cannot stay in charge of the institution if it had to be opened and to become more of a research institute and an archive. From then on, the institution is governed by an international committee comprised of countries in which survivors of Nazi persecution live, most of them in Western Europe, including Israel and the US. Poland managed to get in after the fall of the Soviet Union, but unfortunately, we don't have a lot of Eastern European countries in our international committee. But this history of closeness and reluctance led to a swing to the other side. We really believe in radical openness and try to publish everything we can, which is helped by our unique legal status. We are not a German institution, not an European institution, which means that we are not governed by the European privacy laws, which we respect, but we publish everything that we are not, which we can ethically do, and where there is no other contract regulating publication, which is the case in a lot of recent acquisitions where we get new archival material. There we can only give access in a reading room or when one asks us. So the online archive, as it is today, is a cooperation actually with Yad Vashem in Jerusalem. They supply us technical support. It comprises more than 30 million documents or images. It has more than 31 million names searchable. It doesn't mean individual persons. We do not cluster as for now. It's appearances of a name. One name might be might appear like 10 on 10 different documents. And we had, I don't know why I only have the number for 2020, but we had in 2020 almost 1 million unique users. So it's widely used. I would like to show the online archive actually. So let's see if I can make the switch. Sorry. So, excellent. Is it? Can you see the online archive now?
No, not yet.
Not yet. I will try again. For some reason it crashed. So, is it now visible?
Yes.
Very good. So exactly, it's very easy to find us. Just Arolsen Archives, and if you write it in Google, you will find our landing page. and a link to our online archive, which is actually very easy to use. We only have two main access points. One is very classical archival, a list of all our collections, which can be browsed, and exactly if you don't exactly know what you're interested in and more interested in themes, it's a very good approach. But most of the users use the search function, which is actually very intuitive. You have one search possibility, and for example, Berlin is always a very good example to use. When you look for Berlin, you have a lot of results. They are always divided into two. One is persons and one is themes. It's actually, the theme search is a search of all our archival descriptions. There are thousands of, some of them are also personal files, so it's not very, very clean, but it's already very nice. And the other one is persons, which is a bit misleading because you get 666,000 results. Not all of them are people named Berlin. Some of them are people born in Berlin. It searches all the personal fields in our system, and that's why there are filter functions. You can, for example, exactly. You can filter and make the search more refined and look only for people who are called Berlin or their given name was Berlin. And in the themes, you can also filter by category of the document and by language, or I think one of the more useful possibilities is a theme index, which gives you some clue on what kind of documents we have. Very important when speaking on the online archive. It's quite huge and contains a lot of documents. As always, when one tries to show something, it doesn't work properly. It takes a lot of time to filter such a huge amount of results. Exactly, maybe I will look for something easier.
I'm very sorry to interrupt you.
We don't have time. Excellent. So I will get to the last. I mean, it's very easy to use, and we have tutorials. The only thing which is really important for conclusion is the archive is huge, but it does not include everything we have. That's why if you don't find anything or you're interested in very thorough research, please fill in the forum. The waiting times are at the form. The waiting times are very short at the time. It's 2 or 3 months. And for people working in projects, there is also the possibility to apply for remote access, where you can search our full database from home or from an institution. So thank you very much, and sorry for taking a little bit more time.
Thank you so much. I think this was a very rich overview and very interesting for provenance researchers. As far as I know, it's not a resource yet widely used, but we thought that it could be very relevant, especially for matching and directly identifying previous owners.